Hello, my name's Tim Cranmore and I'm a recorder maker. Sorry, Sarah. Now, in our occasional series about recorders last time, we trawled through the horrific upper reaches of the recorder and experienced true pain. However, you might remember that we got down as far as a low-pitched sopranino in F, in other words, concert E. So I'm going to carry on going down now, so the pain will gradually decrease. Now, I'm going to talk about the universe of D major. Now, D major is just a key to those of us in common with the other couple of dozen keys. It's got two sharps. Yeah, we cope with it on a recorder because a recorder is a chromatic instrument. But there is a universe of D major which I was totally unaware of. Now, I would like to take you back to the 70s and six bedraggled recorder players from London are driving around Galway in a leaky minibus trying to find a pub. Now, we'd just been to the Irish Recorder Course. Now, the Irish Recorder Course is a wonderful thing, famous for its all-night braid sessions, sandcastle competitions, barra-breath and fiddling nuns. And we'd just spent a week playing recorders just almost 24 hours a day. Nowadays, it's easy. You just catch on, well, used to, just got a Ryanair flight and you were in Dublin. Easy. In those days, you had a trek to Holyhead where you would spend 3 or 4 hours on a storm-tossed Irish ferry, most of which was spent queuing across the deck to get half a litre of Jameson's from a steel hatch in the side of the boat. This would be ritually consumed during the course, and then you could queue for another couple of hours to get another half a litre of Jameson's on the way back. How things have changed. However, here we have six bedraggled English recorder players trying to find a pub because the only one of us from Ireland, Margaret Maggots McQuail, insists that Irish pubs are wonderful places full of music and light and laughter and all this sort of thing. And eventually we found a pub with our very leaky, broken down Ford Transit, and we dripped our way into a completely empty bar. And eventually a very, very ancient and bowed Irish lady appeared, and Margaret McQuaid, in her best school days Irish, asked for 6 halves of Guinness. And this lady pulled out a forearm the size of a crane at Harland and Wolff shipyard and obliged with 6 halves of Guinness. And then Margaret McQuail asked once again in her very best Irish if there was any music here. And the lady said in perfect English, "No, there's no music here." She then opened the door at the back of the bar, and as the door opened, we got a glimpse of riot. Music, light, people talking, and then the door was slammed shut. That was a burst of D. That was my first serious burst of D major. Now, Irish people will say, "Oh, the Irish aren't like that. They're never like that." But this was 1970s Ireland. There were donkey carts on the motorways. There were black flags nailed to the telegraph poles. There were British Tommies pointing machine guns at you on the border posts. And when we went into the pub and asked for chicken and chips, I got given half a chicken and the girls got a leg. 1970s Ireland. However, fast forward. Now, my universe in London was very much bounded by Morley College recorder consorts, even songs, BBC Symphony Chorus, last nights of the proms and things. I didn't listen to pop music. I didn't know anything about pop music. And when I moved to this place called Malvern, I was wandering around town and I heard a recorder, someone playing a recorder. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I followed the sound and I found a very engaging character called Tot. Now, Tot was fantastic. His real name was Ian. He was sitting on the pavement. He had lots and lots of dreadlocks, and a dog on a piece of string called Summit. And he told me that he lived in a bender on the hills. And was I interested in whistles? Now, I'd never touched a whistle before, I don't think. So he gave me this strange thing with a steel tube with a blue plastic mouthpiece. And I played a few notes as I could, and he looked very impressed. And I think it was him. He said, "Oh, there's this fantastic session at a pub called the Brewer's Arms on Tuesdays. Oh, and by the way, Nigel Kennedy is playing in the Lamb tonight." Oh, so I found my way to this pub called the Lamb, which I never visited, and shoehorned my way through the door, handing over a £5 note, and sure enough, there was Nigel Kennedy, improvising on Jimi Hendrix with a load of very nervous-looking people up from London with their music stands and their bassoons, totally surrounded by a great crowd of hippies. And on Tuesday, I went to the Brewers Arms, and it was phenomenal. There were hundreds of people there. There were drum sessions in the garden. There were traditional folk players in one bar, and in the other bar there was Nigel Kennedy improvising Hendrix with the Avant Bars Performing Arts Society, who turned up from Brighton very recently in a big American yellow school bus. Now, it was D major, and this universe just smashed into mine and absolutely crashed it wide open. And I thought, what is this? What is this world that I've been totally unaware of? And whistles, I thought, whistles are the thing. Yes, I've got to make whistles. I've got to play whistles. Now, what people don't realise is that whistles, they're notoriously difficult to make because you have to make them badly, otherwise they don't work. They're very difficult to play. I know hardened recorder players who have spent years trying to play a whistle to the same standard as an 8-year-old Irish lad will pick up after a couple of weeks down the pub with his parents. And there are many, many very, very serious makers of whistles, and they do largely metal. Whistles are metal. Wood, well, yeah, some people make wooden whistles like John Swain, and he's fantastic at it, but that didn't last long. I did make a couple of whistles. This is the first instrument I'm going to show you. This is a little whistle in D major. Now, it was very nicely decorated by my daughter using a solar-powered 12-volt pyrography pen. Now, I will say that by then I'd found myself spending 2 weeks in June at the Glastonbury Festival, living in a yurt, making bamboo flutes for people and indulging in the sort of things at Glastonbury Festival that people do indulge in. In other words, I'd almost gone completely native. And my daughter decorated this whistle, and it is indeed a whistle. I don't know if I can play it. Doesn't quite work, you see. It's a shame. Oh, and I found this. This is a bamboo flute in D that I made using red hot irons round a brazier outside a yurt at the Glastonbury Festival for someone who paid me £10, and then someone else took their place. I probably can't play this either. Bamboo flute in D major, just like that whistle was in D major. Can't replay that either. But I was really determined to get into D major, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be a fantastic idea? What the recorder world needs is a recorder in D major. This seemed completely obvious to me, so I went off and I made a little recorder in D major. D major is fantastic. You have D major here. One finger up, and you have E major, very few pesky sharps. Start here, and you have A major. Seems so easy to me, and I went away and learnt a few tunes, and I'll just see if I can play something now. Try not to make too much of a mess of it. And I thought, that's it. My reputation's made. I should turn out lots of these D whistles, and recorder players will love them. But of course, recorder players don't love them, because recorder players, they don't like having to play anything other than C and F, maybe a bass recorder. And I got a lot of, ooh, what key is it in? Ooh, how do I read the notes? Ooh, I can't transpose. I'm not very good at that. And I thought, well, you can learn. You can learn by ear. Ooh, learn by ear. Tricky stuff. But then something else happened, and I realised that this little D recorder player was never going to catch on. Now, if you've ever been to an Irish session, you know what it's like. There will be a line usually of elderly blokes with fiddles. There might be a set of uilleann pipes, if you're lucky, a baran or two, a guitar, a concertina or something like that. And you walk into the pub and someone will strike up a tune, and the elderly men will take up their fiddles, and they will all play 3 iterations of 3 Irish tunes 3 times that sound exactly like the one before. And then they'll have a sup of beer, and then someone will pick up and will strike up another Irish tune. They will play 3 iterations of 3 tunes, each one sounding exactly the same as the one before. Or at least this is the impression you get. But anyway, this is the recorder player's experience of sessions. You walk into the pub, and the people who are sitting in a circle on chairs, they turn round, they take a certain interest in you. They don't know if you're a musician or not. They've never seen you before. And you walk towards them and you take out a case. Oh, they say, that's interesting. He's a musician. I wonder what he's got in there. And they start to think about moving up to make space for you. And you take out your recorder and they look at it and you think, oh, it's a whistle. Fantastic. Whistles are cool. Whistles are sexy. We love whistles. Let's let him in. And then someone clocks the thumb hole. There will be a sharp intake of breath. Mouths will turn down. Ranks will close. And before you know it, you will find yourself sitting on your own on a chair by the gents, wondering why you came in the first place. Now, of course, you have in your head a little tune that you've learned off the internet. And you would love to play that little tune in front of everyone just to show that you can read music, and a recorder's terribly clever because it can play in all keys, and anyway you've got one in D major. So you sit there, and when there's a bit of silence you go, and they're off. All the fiddlers playing 3 iterations of 3 Irish tunes that all sound much the same, and they're in a bit of a daze. If you've ever been to, all due respect to Hare Krishna camp, which I have, and seen them chanting Hare Krishna for hours on end, this is the same sort of expression you see on the face of an elderly fiddler playing Irish folk music. Eventually you give up and you sneak out of the pub with your tail between your legs and your recorder in your pocket, and the assembled company breathes a sigh of relief that they banish yet another pesky recorder player. This is the lot of the recorder player in the Irish session. Now, and this unfortunately is the lot of recorder players in a lot of places, isn't it? It's rather a shame. However, I didn't give up, and I made several other things in D, and I'm going to show you a few of those. Someone came to me a few years ago and said, the last chap who made decent 3-hole pipes in the Forest of Dean has just died. Can you make some? I said, well, I expect I can. What do they look like? And he took me into his lounge and he emptied out a holdall full of 3-hole pipes and said, take your pick. And so I made some 3-hole pipes, and actually they've been very good. And they're in D. We have lots of things in D here. Very familiar note. Just to make sure everything's in D. Yeah, we're still in D major. D major is the folk key. And I've been trying to play a 3-hole pipe. This has been fun. I certainly can't do it with the tabor. Is it tabor? I don't know, but I can play a few tunes. So see, trying to think of a tune. That's called Hunt the Squirrel, apparently, and the Taborers Society love it if you ever go along to their meetings. I made a big one as well. Once again, we have that familiar key, D major. I transferred my bamboo flute into what could be called a medieval flute, which I still can't play, but people buy them, usually people who have pointy tents and like to go around hitting each other with blunt swords. Rather better than the bamboo one. Once again, that familiar key, D major. So we have the universe of D major. Now, does the universe of D major spill over into classical music? Well, it does. A couple of years ago, Ian Wilson from the Guildhall School of Music and Drama got a very nice commission for me to make a double medieval consort. And because a medieval recorder, Y-bore recorder in C, is really far too long to be comfortable, we decided to have it in D. So this was the prototype of the little D recorder for a medieval consort. Once again, you will recognise the key. D major. But, you know, we recorder players, we have our own private universe of D major that no one's ever heard of, and we keep it largely to ourselves. Now, I'm not going to get into voice flutes now, but I am going to get an instrument that I forgot to bring. Just a second. And this is, of course, a sixth flute. Why is it called a sixth flute? Because it's a sixth above F. It's in D. And Stainsby, bless him, left us a very beautiful sixth flute made out of ivory with beautiful carvings on it. And we also have sets of concertos by Baston and other people, English concertos. So the sixth flute was obviously a thing. But this is where we get slightly out of sync, because you'll notice that this is in low pitch, which means that when I play it, we do not get the D you've all been growing to love in the last 10 minutes. That was a mess, wasn't it? Sixth flute in D. Wonderful things. And then we have voice flutes, which I'll get into when I talk about tenors. So that was the universe of D major. The universe of D major absolutely changed my life, and I've really enjoyed brushing up against it occasionally at the Glastonbury Festival, at the Taborers Society, the odd folk session that will allow me to play, because I do play occasionally, usually sit at the back and harmonise gently, and they seem to appreciate that. And all the hippies round here who have dogs on bits of string and dreadlocks, and they sit in the car park playing tunes on a whistle. Bless them. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back next time with that horror, the descant recorder, the school descant recorder. Be afraid.